All right, hi everybody. We have everyone coming in right now. Looks like we have a great group of people eager to talk about student well-being. We're excited to talk about it. Hope you're as excited to listen. We have some awesome guests here from one of our partners, Linewise. They have just a really beautiful philosophy on student well-being, and they center all of their, everything that they do, they center around that, their heart for student well-being. And we're going to have a great conversation about it today. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I will be watching the chat throughout the session. If you have any questions, you can pop them in there. Speaking of which, you can just pop in right now and let us know where you're coming in from. Warm it up a little bit. Another thing, if you are interested in receiving that coffee and you are new here, make sure you stick around till the end to take that exit survey. That's our way of knowing, who was sticking around, who was participating, and we will get you your coffee if you complete that. We have some other polls that are going to go on throughout the session, so participate in those at will. And that's pretty much all I have to say. So I will pass it on over to Josh to get us rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Yeah, we're going to have a good time today. I love all of our partners. We're very fortunate to have great partners here at Trafera, but I will say that the partnership that we have to highlight today is so closely aligned to our strategic vision and to who we are as a company. And it means the world to me that I've been given this opportunity to introduce two folks that I've actually gotten really close to over the last few weeks in planning for this, Theodore and Ross from Linewise. These folks are going to inspire you. We're going to learn a lot together today. Let's do real quick introductions. I'll introduce myself too, but I'll let Ross, you want to take it first and just do a little introduction so people know who you are?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. My name is Ross Young. I'm Executive Vice President of North America for Linewise. And we're excited about the opportunity to talk about well-being today and our mission. And hopefully, we can provide some help in partnership with Trafera.
Awesome. Thank you. Theodora, why don't you introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you all. It's been wonderful getting to know you, Josh, and the rest of your team. And it's just really exciting to be part of this relationship and to be joining everyone who's on the call today. So my name is Theodora Pavkovic. My background is a little bit unusual for someone who works at an ed tech company. So I'm a psychologist. I've worked a lot with families, with parents and children as a parenting coach. And I'm also a certified digital wellness educator. And so the work that I do at Linewise really goes to show how important the sort of the human side of technology is for a company like Linewise. And so much of the work that we do is, of course, focused on protecting children online through technological means. But a lot of what we do is something that I know, Josh, is really important to you too, which is all about community, empowering community, bringing the community together, and really educating and engaging everyone around that child to make sure that child can have a more safe and positive experience online.
That's so good. Yeah, we're gonna have a great time. And for those of you on the call who I've not met already, my name is Josh. I'm a career educator. I lead our education initiatives at Trafera. Most of the work that I've been doing over the last few years has been research focused on how we as educators can integrate technology in a way that is very healthy and it is very connected to others. So sometimes we have this misconception of technology integration. This is something that happens in, grandma's basement and you're isolated and you're alone and you never get outside and see the sunlight. And at Trafera, we believe that technology is one of the most profound ways that we can differentiate instruction and also connect each other. And so we're a big believer in that. And so that's the reason I love this partnership so much. If you don't mind, Theodora, I'm going to ask you to kind of go first and give us just a little bit of background in terms of the state of, I would say really our nation, but Linewise being a global company, I think you can speak to this really at a global level and kind of paint a picture for where we are right now and help us set up the rest of the conversation today.
Sure. So yeah, I thought I would start off before I hand it over to Ross to talk about our philosophy and our framework and our whole approach really to everything that we do. I thought I would start us off by talking a little bit about, like you said, Josh, sort of the state of well-being and mental health for children today, but also the sort of how they're positioned within the digital world. So I think we can't really talk about children's online safety and their behavior online without talking about their mental health. The two things are so closely sort of linked nowadays. We know that on the one hand, the quality of children's mental health and well-being has really drastically decreased, not just over the past 2 years that was of course impacted by the pandemic, but over the past sort of 5 to 10 years even, we've seen this downward trend. And we know from some of the really recent research that's been done by national organizations like the CDC, that the rates of things like self-harm, of suicide, of depression, of anxiety, other diagnosed mental health illnesses are incredibly high. So we have the statistic from 2019 that the second leading cause of death among really young people, so teenagers aged 15 to 19, was intentional self-harm or suicide. So that's sort of the state of well-being. If we look to the other side and we sort of scratch below the surface and we take a look at what children are doing, where they're spending a lot of their time, we can see that one factor that's drastically increased, on the other hand, is the time that children spend online. And this is based on research from last year. And when we look at children sort of within the school setting, the educational setting, we have some statistics there that show us just sort of how quickly the rate of school issue devices and of children using technology in schools has increased. So in 2013, that the number was relatively low. So we had about 32% of students who were using school-issued mobile devices. And just before the pandemic, we had a percentage of about 40 in elementary schools, and then 65 in high schools and middle schools. And then when we sort of fast forward over to 2021, at this point, we can pretty much safely say that all children in the United States, not exactly, but almost all of them have a school issue device. They're using the internet and various apps and platforms to learn. They're spending a lot of time there. Now, the reason that I bring these statistics together is not to say that one causes the other. You probably would have seen that in the media a lot of sort of clickbaity headlines claiming that the internet is destroying children and apps are destroying them and wrecking their mental health and so on. We can't say that one causes the other. I just sort of put these statistics out there and laid this type of groundwork because I think it's really important for us as we think about how to keep children safer, how to keep them healthier, how to engage and educate them to be really responsible digital citizens. We have to ask questions around what they're doing and where they're doing these different things. So it's really important to understand just how much of their time is dedicated to the digital world and how much time they're spending in these virtual spaces. So if we go to the next slide, Kate, the other thing I wanted to sort of highlight for all of you is what we sort of think of as some of the key indicators of the mental health crisis. And these are important for a couple of reasons. On the one hand, they're important because they do indicate sort of where children are at. These are really huge sort of influencing factors, if you will, again, when we're talking about children's emotional and mental health. But these 7 key indicators are really going to be important for what Ross is going to be talking about a little bit later in terms of one of our tech solutions, our monitoring technology, looking at some of these indicators. So I don't want to sort of, statistics are not fun for anyone. I don't want to spend too much time talking about these, but I'll just sort of highlight a few of the statistics around these. So abuse, when we're talking about the US, these are statistics from a couple of years ago. So about 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse and or neglect. And you can see there that the statistics do tend to be much worse with the girls than the boys. When it comes to bullying, and Josh mentioned we are a global organization, and bullying is something that we find to be an issue across all the regions where we work. This is a statistic from the US, though. So about 20% of students, again, of that sort of adolescent 12 to 18 age experience bullying in the US, and about 15% were bullied online or via text. When it comes to drugs, so by the time they're in sort of 12th grade, almost 47% of teenagers have tried illicit drugs. And we know that the internet can be nowadays sort of the primary place where they first sort of come in contact with even the idea of trying out drugs. And then when it comes to violence, about 50% of homicide perpetrators gave some type of warning or a signal online before the event. And I think this is one thing that, of course, in our US context is perhaps even more relevant, unfortunately, than it is in a lot of other parts of the world. But it's a really, really important thing to think about, something that we think about a lot when we think about keeping children safe online and how we can do that through technology. And then if we go to the next slide there, Kate, just the last three. One is extremism. Unfortunately, we know that lots of online social media platforms, everything from Discord to Twitter to websites as well, they're playing an increasingly important role in the radicalization of youth, of young adults in the US as well. And we know that social media in particular plays a really, really key role there as well. Oversharing, which is something that as a psychologist, as somebody who works a lot with parents, I tend to talk about that a lot. Oversharing of personal information, data protection, safety online, all of these things are tied into the type of information that we share about ourselves. So this was a sort of interesting research that was done by the Pew Research Center. About 88% of social media using teens agree that people share too much information about themselves on social media, and about 35% agree with that very strongly. And some other interesting research that's been done there, when you ask teenagers about how they feel about their parents sharing about them, they're not too happy with the state of sharenting, as it's called nowadays as well. And then the seventh and final one is suicide. I mentioned that one earlier as well. Suicide, attempts at suicide, self-harm have become a huge issue in the United States. In particular, some of the research CDC or the recent CDC research also showing that, again, it's much worse for young girls when it comes to the boys, but it is the second leading cause of death for an incredibly young age range. Again, if you ask me as a psychologist, so 10 to 14-year-olds in the US. And then Kate, if we go over to the next slide, when we're talking specifically about youth depression, and when we talk about sort of undiagnosed or untreated rather, youth with depression who've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, the map, as you can see there, really doesn't look very great, literally. So if you go over to mhanational.org, you'll be able to sort of see where your state in particular stands when it comes to this. You can see that nationally, it's a really, really high number. It's way too high of a number. So about 60% of youth who've been diagnosed with an official mental health illness actually go untreated. And the statistics are very, very high for two states in particular. So both Texas and California. And then if we go over to the next slide, Kate, before I turn it over to Ross, who's going to talk a lot more about our approach to really addressing all of these issues. The final sort of idea that I wanted to leave you with, or the final image in your minds, I know that a lot of you work within sort of the tech realm of your schools and your school districts. I think it's a really important thing to consider, is that there are a lot of sort of children's emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and a lot of these risks that are sort of really difficult for us to see. Some of them are more visible than others. And so the things that sort of lie above the surface are typical things like changes in behavior, changes in mood as well, changes in sort of daily patterns, physical injuries, really poor academic performance, children missing out from school a lot. We know that, for example, bullying, which I mentioned earlier, and this was research that was done by the United Nations, is a huge cause for children being absent from school all around the world. Children requesting for help, which is something that Ross will be talking about in a little bit as well, in the context of one of our newest pieces of technology at Linewize. And some known risks when it comes to domestic abuse as well. So even these risks are sometimes not that easy to catch. We really need to be paying attention to children in order to be able to detect these. But what lies below the surface, given this digital age and the amount of time that children are spending online, these can be even more difficult to detect. And so you can see some examples there of things like, again, I mentioned bullying and violence before, adult content. So things like self-generated sexual content, harmful image sharing, of course, images and videos of child abuse, and a lot of different things as well. And this is really where technology can play a really, really key role in making sure that we can sort of bring all of these risks up to the surface and have a much easier time of detecting when children are put in danger by some of these risks. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Russ.
Excellent. Thank you, Theodora. And from a poll perspective, just had a couple of questions, and we like to make these interactive. So there's going to be, I believe, 2 polls, hopefully. And so if you would please participate and provide us some information of kind of, who you are and what is the priority today from a well-being perspective within your organization and in your culture. There's been a lot of funding that's been made available through the Safer Community Acts and lots of different statewide grants that are available to bring more focus to the school districts around well-being because of the epidemic mentioned by the CDC or brought up by the CDC, if you will, for the mental health of youth. So the government's really putting their money where their mouth is in that regard. We'll talk about some options. We can go through this, but it's important that for us as organizations understand what does well-being look like today in your school and in your organization, and then are you kind of leading that? We're seeing a lot of new departments for that, and that's really why one of the things that from a Linewize perspective, what we're really focused on is building a framework, a North Star, if you will. For any district. We don't want to just build an individual product like a content filter or a threat detection tool. Ultimately, it fits the bigger kind of goal of keeping children safe and really protecting every child across their digital journey. So we've built as a major differentiator in our technology is that we're actually we have an ethics framework and we have a consultative framework that was built by psychologists just like Theodora. And we came up with these 3 concepts that we form all of our development around, all of our onboarding processes around. When we're going to release new features, we run it through this ethical and this well-being framework to ensure that it aligns with goals that align with these 3 goals. So we've really created 3 categories: prevention, intervention, and education really are the goals. So with that, we've built, if you go to the next slide, we've built a wheel around this that touches the different personas that you may be working with or dealing with. If you see up there, right outside the prevention, intervention, and education sections, ultimately, we have the personas that typically purchase these categories of products or that use these category of products. So we have our IT team. So within an IT team, there's a firewall component that we provide, as well as a content filtering piece that we provide. And each of these are absolutely interconnected. There's evidence and visibility for well-being outcomes that can come out of any independent product. But ultimately, what us as an organization, we want to walk our customers through really surrounding that student in the middle there with the prevention, intervention, education, with the personas around them that really affect them. And those go out into the product. So essentially, we have a classroom management solution. We have a well-being analysis solution. We have a record management solution. We have another solution that detects, if a student types in they're going to harm themselves, there's another called Monitor. And then in the education section, we really empower and enable the community, right? We have a parent application, an online safety hub, etc. Now, does a district or anybody roll all these out at once? Absolutely not. Typically it's 1 or 2 of these at a time. And then we really set some goals up that align with your 5-year plan around digital well-being in partnership with Chafer to walk you through this journey over time to ultimately doing as much as you can from a technology, persona enablement, and well-being approach. So if you go to the next slide, The first product, so I guess the question is, how do we do this? So we're going to really high level some of the products that we offer through Trifera. First of all, we have a content filter. It's incredibly important to prevent users from accessing harmful content online. It's as simple as the reputation of the URL or domain or website that user is going to, and us being able to block it. With that can kind of get in the way a little bit from a curriculum or instruction perspective. So we have a classroom management solution. We partner with it as well that actually delivers our online content to students for digital citizenship. So for example, what a lot of districts are doing that leverage our products is if a student is habitually accessing pornography, for example, they put them in a specific penalty box type policy until they complete our Digital Experts Academy class. So, and then they can gain access to having more access to internet as well. So it's not about punitive approach, right? It's really about a rehabilitative approach across the board. If you go to the next slide, moving on from our content filter, we also really partner with the community. So we have a community offering that's no cost to any of our customers. It includes a couple of components. One, it includes expert advice. So you can see Theodora's picture even there. She writes a lot of the articles that are parent facing, a lot of the articles that are staff facing, that really help the community become better digital parents. Now, is a parent randomly going to go to a website to learn about that? If you promote it, probably maybe a small percentage, but we thought about how to get more engagement there. So we actually provided a parent application with our content filter. So for example, the Chromebook, the iPad, the Windows device, whatever you're putting in their home and issuing to the student, we actually provide the parent with a little bit, if you want to, a little bit of control of that device so that they can set bedtimes, so that they can have a say about what's going on the device that is in their home, even though it's owned by the school district at a certain time. They can't unlock things, right, such as pornography or SIPA violations, things of that nature, but it allows them to have some control and visibility into what their students are doing online. And we provide full control of that to the actual district in and of itself. So you can say, hey, I want to share blocked terms that their students search with the parent. With that content, right, and we know a lot of students try to access pornography or search for things that are risque. We partner that expert advice with that alert. So for example, child types in something that is very adult based, that would be partnered on the parent app with an article on how to have a conversation with your child about accessing inappropriate content online. So it's really about providing the evidence for the parent or the family and the education to be able to help create a better digital citizen. And with that in and of itself, we actually provide the community a free content filter for their own personal devices. So at no cost, they can add their own, because they can add their own child's phone or device. So because if it's happening on the school Chromebook or whatever device it is, it's definitely happening on the phone that they give their 12-year-old child. So it prompts them to add their own child's personal device to a personal content filtering plan that is separate from the district in itself. So it's a really popular program we have that has really been enabling from a community perspective quite a bit. If you go to the next slide, here is our student support system. We have two products in this particular regard. One of them is reactive, and that's called Linewize Monitor, and one of them is proactive. The reactive tool will start there is, for example, if a student types in, I'm going to bring a gun to school tomorrow, okay? And we see a lot of searches like that. Or I'm going to harm myself or harm others tomorrow. Or there's evidence of sexual abuse that is going on. Our tool actually picks that up and then sends that to a human moderation team. And that human moderation team looks at context of where do they go online? What are previous captures? What are the searches before? What other websites have they gone to? Things of that nature to determine the level of risk. Those 7 categories that Theodora touched on earlier are really what we look for. So we use an AI screening tool and then a very advanced human moderation tool that's trained and led by psychologists like Theodora, to where they follow a very rigid process to moderate, and then they only call or email on serious issues that the district defines. So you can say, hey, you know what, at the middle school or high school level, we don't want to get anything sexual that's sent to us if they try to go online, our filters for that. But If they're immediate imminent risk for harm, call me, right? So that your principals, your counselors aren't sifting through tons of alerts. A major differentiator here is that we can look at every single application that's on the device. So for example, a lot of competitive tools that offer this, they're only API based. So they just talk to Google or Microsoft Cloud. If you think about if a student types in a suicide note or something of that nature in Notepad, right? This tool would pick it up. It's incredibly strong, and I'll talk about how we can get some data out of this for your district today. The second platform we offer is called Pulse. Now, Pulse is a well-being analysis platform. So it is a proactive tool. In the sense that we thought about, hey, we're picking up a lot of this reactive things, right? And things that are happening live and right now in the monitor platform. Who are the students that are doing this, and what were the signs for them before they got to that particular point? So we want to get to them before they get caught by the or picked up by the reactive tool, if you will. We call that Pulse. So we do a well-being analysis here. And it checks in with a student every single week to look at their mood and check in on the 7 core areas of need. And I'll get into what this looks like. It also encourages them to have gratitude. It's a sub 60-second check-in to see if they need help at that particular time. All the tools basically out there for well-being, most of them, are really focused on administrators having to do something. This is the only tool on the market that is actually proactive with children so that they can reach out on a regular basis. This is not a static survey tool that you do every twice a year to inform your well-being initiatives. This is something that checks in on a regular basis and then analyzes that, because moods and things can shift, and that's when things can happen. So this will provide some insight to your counselors, to your principals, to your well-being staff about what's going on there. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about how to get support for this within your system and organization. So for every single school that wants to, at no cost, we provide a really valuable report. It's called a student safety audit. Now, this is an audit that leverages our monitor platform. It's a silent install of the platform that takes about 15 minutes to install. We let it collect data for 2 to 3 weeks. And then our cyber safety team actually builds a report for you that includes recommendations, such as different types of training that may need to be done because bullying is very high at a specific time. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you an example of what the student safety audit would bring you. So at the end of the student safety audit, we provide this report. We PDF it for you. It has a lot of information that we've already included in some of this webinar. And then that can be socialized. That can be socialized across board members, superintendent, well-being directors, etc. So if you're in IT, a lot of times this can come out of a separate budget. And this, if you bring this to it, also can qualify for grants and things of that nature. So we provide this audit. We'll show how many students do we monitor over the time frame, how many devices, how many captures. This is some real audit numbers. So as an example, this shows 7,000 students almost that we looked at. We captured 2.3 million entries. We came 70 risks came out of that. So based on this information, you can determine what level of load can my school handle with this. A lot of districts, the fear is, I don't have the staff, I don't have the capacity, and frankly, this is potentially a liability because of that. But what this is designed is for allow you to make a data-driven decision to see, am I ready for this yet as my district? And if I am ready for it, at what level or capacity, and when should we plan to roll this out so I can enable my principals, my counselors, my staff, etc. So that's a really important component. If you go to the next slide, it will show data on, what hours a day are these things happening? What days of the week are they happening? We take this information and again, put together recommendations. So that's the student safety audit. If you're interested in doing something like that, again, no cost. It is not invasive. We provide you support and you can decide what you want to do at that point. That can be accessed through Trafera. It's a partnership offering that we have. So that's the student safety audit. If you're interested, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for that today. If you go to the next slide, and I recommend doing these concurrently or in succession. This is called our student well-being analysis. So essentially it's a silent install, very similar of Pulse. So what we do is we do 4 check-ins at a specific cohort of students or schools. So usually we'll pick the, the most at-risk group based on some of the content filter data you have. You can partner with Trafera organization to determine which direction to go. And we will do 4 check-ins with your students. So it's literally just 4 emails that go out to your students. There's an email that goes out to the teachers at, let's say you did it at the middle schools, and we recommend at least 500 students. We don't like to do a whole district out of the gate. It's just for the analysis and of a specific cohort. But you roll this out, 1 email to staff to say, hey, in your homerooms, ask your students to check in on Wellbeing Wednesday. We're looking at a platform that looks at well-being of students. And then you send those emails at those time. It goes to student inbox. They open it up and they do less than a 60-minute check-in. Once they do that 60-minute check-in, we'll, again, at week 3, after we've done a few surveys, we'll measure your engagement. So how many students are actually checking in with us? What the Pulse platform is absolutely necessary in today's day and age with Gen Z that isn't comfortable walking down the hallway to say, hey, counselor, I think I'm having a problem today, right? We want to meet students where they're at with the way that they communicate and are comfortable communicating today on a screen to really tap into what's going on in that regard. If you go to the next slide, I'll show some examples. This is really designed to help find students that are falling through the cracks. Every time we do one of these, we get answers or comments from customers that say, that was a straight A student. We had no idea they were having issues. Frankly, thank you for providing the service to find that particular child, right? So we'll show you how many students need some help, are feeling negative, they're feeling in the middle, which way they're trending, and then it'll show the engagement of how many students are actually checking in. And if that engagement's high, you can get to some of those students. So this is the only identified question. For privacy purposes, we de-identify every single question that we ask of who that student is. We just tie that data to the school, but the one we do identify is, I need help. That goes into a special dashboard for a counselor. And we typically pick one well-being person, counselor, IT person to actually have access to the interface. So really strong in that regard. If you go to the next slide, we'll give you this data. So these 6 categories are what we're looking for in Pulse. So it rolls through clinically approved questions, not gender or identity based. It stays out of that particular area that may be touchy in certain areas. You can review the questions before that goes out. And in this example, it showed that 47% of kids in this particular cohort or school responded that negatively to the healthy questions. So what are the nutrition programs that are being put together there, right? There's grants for those types of things, and this can really identify those things and help point you in the right direction and inform those programs. 27% of students in this particular regard responded negatively to a positive identity question, which per Theodora and our psychologists on staff is one of the leading causes to students and users feeling hopeless that can lead them down a path of depression or suicidal ideation. So identifying some of these things can really have data-driven decisions on the programs that you want to invest in, get grants for, and really make an impact. So once we collect this, if you do become a customer of these products, we put this together in your file, and every 90 days or once a year, depending on what plan you sign up for, we look at what were the numbers when we started. What type of approach have we taken and education we provided? And what are the numbers now? And what are those goals? We help set goals together in a partnership so that we can make really some impact in the communities. So by combining all those solutions that we talked about earlier, the content filter with the classroom management, with the monitor tool, with the proactive Pulse tool, we really get some combined data and visibility. And then when you partner that community aspect, you could absolutely make a difference in your city, in your county, in your town. Oftentimes you're the largest IT network in your towns. You have reach into the community and can absolutely make an impact there. And we're here to partner with you on it, which is why we develop these products. But that's kind of what I have today around those. If you're interested in doing a well-being analysis as well, we'll have a poll that is available for that. But I think that's what I have there. Josh, did you have anything that you wanted to add
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, I wish that I would have had access to some of this information when I was in school administration. I was just actually right when you asked that, I was just scrolling through the attendee list here for the participants, and I see that there's a couple of lots of former educators that I know, but there's a handful of former principals that were kind of in the same position that I was in for so long, Ross, where I think we overestimate our instincts. I don't know if I should speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself. I think I overestimated my instincts as an administrator, and I think there's other people that are probably in that boat too, where we're trained to trust our gut, And I'll be the first to admit, I had a few times where I was wrong, and it cost. It hurts, to think, like you mentioned, that there was the one kid that was a straight A kid that you never would have. This girl sat across from me at my desk, and we all cried together. Me, her, grandma, grandpa, and mom, dad. We all bawled our eyes out because of some of the mistakes that were made. The warning signs may have been there, but we were all trusting our gut, and sometimes your gut can get you in a lot of trouble. And I know I saw Scott popped on just a minute ago, and I know he and I have had that talk too. And there's a few people in the chat who are various levels of administration who have all been there and experienced this on the losing end of that battle. And this is the brilliant thing, is that we time can be fast. We have insight into this in a way that we dreamed about years ago. We have insight into it. I know we're running close on time, but Theodore, okay, is that my cue? Kate? To
Oh,
wrap
no,
it up?
it's not. I wanted to get it up so people that have to dip out are able to complete that while we continue some Q&A.
No, that's perfect. No, I was going to pivot to Q&A, but I think, do you want to do real quick final thoughts? Theodore, do you have a final thought here?
Yeah, well, we touched upon so many really important topics, just in terms of what Ross has shared, in terms of what we're able to do at Linewize, and what we're really passionate about doing every day. But that, coupled with what you just said, Josh, I think for me as a psychologist, there are a couple of things that really pain me when we talk about why we need this type of technology today. One is obviously that children are spending so much of their time in the virtual world, as opposed to, I don't want to say in the real world. The virtual world is very much real to them, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But they're often spending an excessive amount of time there, and it often results in them being increasingly distanced from the people in their lives who really care about them. But Ross mentioned this earlier. We know that there's a pretty large chunk of the Gen Z generation who aren't that comfortable having sort of face-to-face interactions. And we know from a recent national survey that as much as about a third of students in the US haven't gone up to their mental health counselor at school because they didn't feel comfortable doing that. So there's definitely a need for that reason, for this kind of technology. But I think the other thing also is that a lot of the leading experts in this field really recommend that schools become a lot more involved in sort of global mental health screening, and it can be a really difficult thing for school districts to do for lots of different reasons. But technologies such as Pulse, for example, are a really nice way to start in a very small way with really, really small steps. Take that first step to just assessing the level of well-being at your school district. I definitely don't like, I think what you just said, Josh, is really important in terms of instincts and then not always being correct. I would definitely still like to see administrators, counselors, teachers trusting themselves and trusting the relationships they have with their students. I wouldn't want anyone to stop doing that, because I think the excessive use of technology, unfortunately, leads us in that direction where we trust ourselves less and less, and we trust the technology more. So my final thought would just be that I think a balance is really good. I think using our own best features as human beings who can feel and empathize and be kind and compassionate and really get to know our students well. I think we need to use those skills and then couple them with these really great tools that can help sort of fill in the gaps a little bit more. And that's sort of the best way that I like to think about these types of technologies.
I love that. It's about the coupling. It's about leveraging the technology to fuel your instincts and to make better data informed decisions. Absolutely. I love that. Ross, I'll give you the last word, man. Anything else to close us out?
Well, not specifically. I think we covered a lot of ground here, and I'm really excited about the interaction that we've had in the chat window. I've been enjoying people talking back and forth, but the key to this is really working together to bring your organization along. How can you do that? You do that with data. People really respond to that when it's specific to your district. So even if something like this potentially isn't in budget, I'd recommend doing an audit so you can have a goal and start to work towards getting your district to understand that leveraging digital tools to keep students safe today is paramount today. So anyways, I really thank everyone for taking your time, and we look forward to partnering and working with you as a Linewize and Trafera partnership. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, us too. On behalf of Trafera, thank you so much. You don't get coffee unless you fill out that survey, so make sure you do that. And on that note, I will see you all. We're going to do more webinars. Kate, you probably know when the next ones are. I know there's a lot more in the pipeline. So thank you all so much. This is always such a good time for me. Ross, Theodora, you guys are amazing. The very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.